Good afternoon, folks. I'm Eric Olson. I'm from Keenan, and I am ready. I'm here to talk to you today about surviving an active assailant event. Just a little background on me, why I'm here speaking with you. My background is both in military and law enforcement. And unfortunately, in both of those professions, I was exposed to real-world events involving active assailant types of incidents. So the information that I'm going to share with you today is both from a collective with several partnerships with DHS, Federal Bureau of Investigations, Department of Homeland Security, and including real-world expertise from my team who have survived themselves through surviving active assailant events. So without further ado, active assailant events. Why are we even calling it an active assailant event? Active assailant event could represent anything that would involve an event where an assailant could use a firearm, could use a tool such as a knife, a vehicle that we've tragically seen used in the Manhattan attack several weeks ago. The point is, if we have somebody that wants to cause us harm and they have the ability to do so, they're going to find the mechanism to do it. It's up to us as survivors and as professionals, whether we're here at this campus or out and about in our communities, to use as many of these tools as possible, to throw as many of these things that we're going to talk about in front of them, to delay them, and ultimately to dissuade them from attempting to attack us. All right, I'm going to switch the screen or the slides here. Just give me 1 second. Oh, here we go. Okay, and here's your definition from the Department of Homeland Security on what an active assailant event is. It's an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined or populated area. All right. Based on what my job is and what my intent here to do for you today is, I'm here to help you start to craft or sharpen and mold that survivor mindset. If you haven't sat through one of these lectures before involving this type of curriculum, or if you have, I'm here to sharpen those tools you may already possess or help you to start developing that mindset to survive, because that's what it takes, is a healthy mindset and understanding of what your capabilities are, your surroundings, and more importantly, what we could potentially face. And having to do so, I'm going to have to expose you to some sensitive material. By no means are any of these videos graphic, but they could be deemed sensitive to some viewers in the audience. If it is sensitive at any point in time, feel free to stop viewing if you need to. But in order to realistically prepare you for what you may encounter, I have to expose you some of that imagery. Point in case, this active assailant video comes out of Florida in 2010. This was an event that occurred in a Florida school board meeting. An individual enters the chambers and produces a weapon and threatens the lives of several individuals in that chamber. You're obviously going to watch the imagery and listen to the audio, or listen and follow along on the subtitles. What I really want you to start doing is I want you to start identifying these windows of opportunity that present themselves for you to do one of the three things that we're going to discuss: either run, hide, or fight, because several of those opportunities present themselves multiple times in this event. At the end of the video, we'll just give out some pointers and some tips and see if we would have done anything differently than the survivors that encountered this event.
There, and it's part of the plan we have. The workshop we're going to have following this meeting, but this will be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. Oh.
Eric, you might need to adjust the audio on your side. The video is not showing or displaying audio.
John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead. You're on.
May I help, sir?
Yes.
May I help?
We're having some technical difficulties here. Bear with me, folks.
There, and it's part of the plan we have, the workshop we're gonna have following this meeting, but this will be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. Everybody in this room. Poll. Counter in the road. Please. Yes. Everyone else leaving. Hey, sir. John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead. You're on.
May I help, sir?
Yes.
May I help?
I'm gonna die. Can we talk for a minute? It's already been prison. Man, I ask you a question. Can I ask you a question? John, get out.
You see, our benefits is run out. We're broke. See what I'm saying?
Please explain to us, sir. Just explain to us.
I'm not sure. We can work.
We'll talk. Hey, listen to me. Look, I'm a good guy. I've got a lot with my wife and family. I don't need to die. In the school board here, we just try to do what's best for children. I've been in the system. I was principal 11 and a half years. I've got a great wife. I've been married to her 40 years. I've got 2 great boys. Just please talk to us. If I can help you get your wife a job somewhere else, I'll be glad to do that. Yes, sir. No, you're not.
What did she do? I mean, because I really don't know who you're talking about, to be very honest with you. I don't know who you're talking about.
He's fired.
I believe that, you said that, but what did she do?
Oh, yeah.
My,
Can you just talk to us a little bit about it? Where did she work at school?
no, he's.
Hey, how you doing?
Morning.
I'm school safety officer.
Come on in.
You got a real gun there?
Come on in.
He probably doesn't have it. Tell me what she did.
They're calling the police.
I know that, but tell me what your wife did.
I'm gonna die.
Tell me what your wife did. If you're gonna kill yourself or kill us or whatever, at least let us know what's going on, because I'll be very honest with you. I swear, I don't know who your wife is or what she did. I don't. I don't want to die like anybody else does.
This must have signed the papers, I'm sure, but he doesn't know her. What's the?
I'm just asking, what did she do? Was she a teacher? Was she their cousin? Did she work in the classroom? Did she work in the cafeteria? Was she a bus driver? I don't know.
Hey, I will go with you. I will stand up with you, get your wife a job, whatever it takes. Hey, these other 4 guys.
Listen. I'm the one that signed the paper, right? Okay. I don't remember, and I don't know who she is. But let them go. I'm the one that did it. I mean, they are signed the papers. I'm the only one that signed. Will you let them go? I mean, but you're obviously upset at me. So why are they here? Part of what? Sir, I don't know what you
ran stop tax, okay? You said, we don't need no tax.
No,
There's plenty of money. Then as soon as you got the school system, then you turned around and said, oh, now we need to pass the sales tax again.
I said we need to have some stuff from the very beginning. I campaigned on that. Yes, I did. You can look on the material. I said from the beginning, to have some sales tax in the most equitable way, because everybody pays, not just property owners. So see, here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want anybody to, just listen to me for a minute. I don't want anybody to get hurt. And I've got a feeling that what you want is the cops come in and kill you because you're mad. Because you think you're going to die with me. But why? This isn't worth it. This is a problem. Please don't. Please don't. Please.
Well, I don't think. I think it's.
He had a cat's mind. That's what he wanted right there, Mike. That's what I was trying to talk to him. I don't mind. I'm fine.
Okay, do we identify some of those windows of opportunity that presented themselves in the video? I know for me, like the first glaringly obvious sign that something is wrong is when the gentleman stands up and he starts spray painting the symbology from the movie V for Vendetta on the wall. If you've ever seen that movie, it came out in the early 2000s. The entire theme of the movie is about revenge, and the ending is pretty cataclysmic, fire and explosions, and a lot of people end up dying. So personally, for me, if I'm sitting in a room, especially in a board meeting room, when an individual stands up and does that, I'm more apt to start walking towards the exit. I'm not going to wait around for this individual to produce a weapon, which he ends up doing, and in threatening manner starts pointing it at the school board officials on the board. So some opportunities that also presented themselves is when he is directing his attention towards other individuals who are fleeing. That gave those members on that board split seconds to make a decision to flee or hide from the individual. And another opportunity presented itself when Ginger comes out of a hallway and basically attacks the assailant with a handbag. The initiative on that I appreciate, but the problem is that Ginger needed a brick in her purse if she's going to subdue an individual who's armed with a weapon. Okay, but what it did do temporarily for a split second or two was distract the assailant. He took his eyes and his weapon off of the 6 school board officials in their chairs and focused his attention on her. Now, that would have given them the chance and the opportunity to either flee for a door or to subdue somehow or strike the individual with the weapon and restrain him and get him down into the ground. But unfortunately, those individuals didn't capitalize on that event. And then it takes us to our next opportunistic moment or moments. The individual gets into dialogue with his intended victims, which is atypical of these types of events. What we know statistically in these active assailant events, that the duration is anywhere between 4 to 8 minutes, because that's how long it usually takes law enforcement to arrive and end the situation. These events usually end one of 3 ways. Either the assailant gives up to first responders, the assailant takes himself out of the situation, or law enforcement takes him out of the situation. But with this dialogue, there's some interesting things said back and forth between 2 gentlemen in particular on the board. There's a gentleman in a red blazer and a gentleman in a black blazer. I think what the gentleman in the red blazer was attempting to do was humanize the situation, saying phrases like, I've got a family, I've got a lot to live for, and we're just trying to do what's best for the children. I will go with you to help you and your wife get her a job. Whether or not he can produce that for this gentleman is consequential. What he's ultimately trying to do is buy some time. And we know based on that 4 to 8 minute statistic, that window, that if I can just keep this individual talking, I'm delaying the inevitable from happening. And it's every second that ticks by is a chance for law enforcement to get closer to ending the situation. I think we get off the rails a little bit with the gentleman in the black blazer who starts interrupting the assailant, who starts getting into an argument about what he campaigned on, and ultimately kind of chiding him into lowering his weapon and discharging it. Miraculously, the only individual that was hit by gunfire and ultimately killed was the assailant himself. This was an edited video, and what you didn't see happen was an armed security guard who came in off screen and engaged the suspect. So interestingly enough, if you read that blurb at the end or listened to that message that happened when the gentleman says, I think he had a spike, referring to the assailant being a gun with blank. That was a real firearm loaded with real bullets and real projectiles. And this individual misses from no further away than I am to my computer screen, not a very far distance. So some things that played into him missing was what we know statistically, and especially about this gentleman, but statistically about these assailants, is that they're typically not trained. They don't have the military training. They don't have the combat experience or background, which is good to know, because an individual that's not trained, that is suffering through the same physiological things that we are going through as survivors in this event, the loss of fine motor skills, those all play into this individual missing that close of a shot. So having that knowledge and that feather in our cap for survivability, we know that this assailant that we could potentially face off against is going to be making mistakes. And this individual made several, turning his back on his intended victims multiple times, letting Ginger get the drop on him by hitting him with the handbag, engaging in dialogue where he was turning his attention elsewhere. Us as survivors, if we can capitalize on the mistakes that this individual makes and execute on demand, but it's going to take us having some situational awareness and then some understanding of our own personal capabilities. Okay, so what can we do as a district or personally as a campus to reduce the potential for an attack? Because unfortunately, everything that I'm going to tell you today or share with you, these techniques, it's not going to stop this from happening until we could figure out how to stop these mass murders, these atrocities from occurring in our communities. This is the best that we can do. And what we can do is throw as much of these techniques, these things in front of our assailants to delay them and dissuade them in the middle of an attack. You merely just sitting here listening to these techniques in this lecture is reducing the potential for you to be exposed to one of these events. So right now, as it stands, the national best practice is run, hide, fight. Okay. This is as basic as it gets. There's several companies like mine that have acronyms like ALERT and RED, and those are awesome. But the problem is they're convoluted. If you forget everything that I'm going to tell you today in this lecture, I promise you are not going to forget run, hide, fight, because it's already codified in here. This goes back to when we had to face off with a saber-toothed tiger that decided it was going to make a lunch out of us. We did one of these three things. But you'll notice that there's no section for sit there and remain and do nothing like the Florida school board officials did, and not getting out of their chairs and trying to save themselves or assist Ginger in subduing the assailant. Okay, we have to overcome that fear, that panic, that paralysis that may set in. We have to overcome that in order to continue to think about solutions to our problems. Okay. So back on the run, hide, fight concept, it's not a linear equation. We just simply start at run. We're running from our assailant and we trip, we twist our ankle, we're injured, and now we're going to run into a hall closet, shut the closet door, and now the closet door is breached and opened by our assailant. Now we're going to fight for our life. Okay, you select any one of these techniques at any given moment to help you and help others survive through the event. If running is your best option and it's your best course of action, do so. If hiding is your only option and you have a good defensible space to do so, hide. And if I am running down a hallway and I've got several other survivors or my family members with me and I go face to face with my assailant, it's kind of hard to do the other options. I'm probably going to have to fight through this individual in order to save myself and those around me. Okay, to paint the picture why this is not a linear equation and why we need to be prepared to switch gears and try another tactic. This next video comes out of Michigan. This was an active assailant event that happened in 2020. Unfortunately, a 15-year-old student finds his father's handgun and brings it to school. shoots and kills several of his classmates. What precipitated was the individuals in this video in this classroom go into their lockdown procedures. They lock the door, shut the lights off, get themselves down as low as they could. Something changes in that room or outside of that room, rather, which causes them to switch gears and try another tactic because staying in that room was no longer safe to do.
Yeah, we're here. Yes. Sheriff's office. Take come out.
Yeah, I couldn't say to come on. You don't know what's going on.
Now, we're not willing to take that risk right now. I can't hear you. We're not taking that risk right now. Okay, well, come to the door, look at my ass, bro.
No. Yeah, bro.
No. He said, bro.
He said, bro. Red flag. Oh. Slow down, you're fine. You're gonna go right out. Slow down.
So the voice on the other side of the door was the active assailant. That was the 15-year-old assailant with the gun attempting to bait or lure those students and that faculty member out into the hallway. Those students and that faculty member registered that's not the way it's supposed to sound from law enforcement side. And we're not supposed to leave this place of safety once we barricaded ourselves in there. And furthermore, that's not the way law enforcement is predominantly trained across the country. How they're going to interface with people that are confined and barricaded themselves into an office setting or a closed classroom. They're going to announce their presence at the doorway before they make that entry. They're going to let you know that it's a police officer, sheriff's deputy outside the door numerous times. That law enforcement officer is already going to be in possession of your access door keys, whether it's an electronic swipe card or a mechanical key. And once they unlock that door and open it, they're not just going to rush into the room, because they're anticipating whoever's inside that room has sat through one of these classes and could be potentially prepared to defend themselves by whatever means necessary, meaning they don't want to come into your space and get hit by a 3-hole punch or a fire extinguisher, okay? So once they open the door, depending on the lighting situation or how dimly lit it is in the room, they're going to illuminate that space with flashlight, illuminate the floor space on the doorway, signifying that they're a police officer. You're going to see them illuminated with their uniform. And then once they do so, they're going to continue to announce themselves and then make entry in a very deliberate fashion into that space. Okay. Those folks in that room registered that that was a potential threat, and they realized that it's not going to take the assailant very long to figure out that he could potentially fire indiscriminately through the closed doorway and inadvertently or inadvertently hit individuals inside the classroom. So they made the right call. And that's an important aspect for us to realize, is that once we select one of these tactics, run, hide, or fight, we might not necessarily want to stay mired or cemented into that tactic. We may need to switch gears like these folks did, because the situation is rapidly evolving around us. Okay. Run, escape if you can. The best one of these events and you're involved in is the one you're no longer involved with. So if you can get away from the situation, get away from it, whether that's in a vehicle or using your own mobility with your legs to run, please do so. Talking with some folks that survived the Las Vegas Highway 91 shooting, having some discussions about how they moved away from their location. They were doing things that were eerily similar to how we would move in a threat environment in the military or law enforcement. And the tactic was called bounding. You can think of it as in terms of playing a game of leapfrog. So what these individuals did, who were positioned at the at center stage, near the stage, is once they heard the gunfire, they immediately got themselves down low to the ground. And if that's all I can do in the onset of this event, is get myself down low and reduce the amount of signature, the amount of me that my assailant can see, is already putting me on a trajectory to survive this event. Once they were on the ground, they started looking around in their environment for a place that they could run to that was relatively nearby. And in this case, it ended up being a steel trash enclosure that was about 30 to 40 feet away. They waited for a lull in the gunfire, collected as many survivors as they could, and sprinted towards that steel trash enclosure and got down behind it. Once they took that cover behind that steel trash enclosure, they started identifying some more objects nearby that they could run to and get down behind. And the next objects were a set of concrete jersey barriers that protected the concert venue from the parking lot. They sprinted to those barriers about 30, 40 feet away, got down behind those barriers. They continued to do this leapfrog fashion until they got to an adjacent casino building, completely out of sight of the assailant, who we now know was elevated in a casino room. What the intent here is moving in a deliberate fashion and not exposing you and yourself to the assailant who may be nearby and potentially targeting you, and identifying things that we can get down behind that could protect us from gunfire. And on that topic, what those individuals sought were materials made of concrete or steel that could protect them from a bullet. So when we talk about materials that could protect us or hide us, we talk about cover and concealment. And what are they? So that steel trash enclosure, those concrete jersey barriers, those are things in that environment that I would consider cover. They're going to hide you, and they're also going to prevent a bullet from hurting you. If all I can do is get down behind some shrubs, get down behind a desk, those objects may not provide ballistic protection, but they're going to mask your signature from a potential assailant. Okay, so it's important to know if I'm going to seek cover in and around objects, what its likelihood or propensity to protect me is. Hiding, escaping if we can, or barricading ourselves into our classrooms or our office spaces. If you are confined in your classroom space or in an office, and we get the alert to lock down, or we hear gunfire in close proximity to us, we're going to turn this setting into the Alamo, meaning nobody is going to come into our space and nobody's coming out of that space until it is deemed safe to do so by law enforcement. What are some of the things that we're going to be doing inside of that space? If we can do so, we're going to lock the door. We're going to turn the lights off. If I have the ability to mask my windows by drawing some shades or some curtains, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get myself down low to the ground and away from those window openings and door openings. If I can remember to do so, I'm going to try to silence my cell phone. I'm trying to present a picture to the assailant that nobody is occupying that space, and to go seek other victims elsewhere, because we know that this individual who isn't trained, who is operating at a compressed 4 to 8 minute time frame, is attempting to seek easy targets, and they're less apt to try to come through heavy grade commercial fire rated doors in order to find potential victims who may be inside this space. We're going to take it a step further. All right, the unfortunate thing that came out, the knowledge that we gained from Uvalde, is that the door from the classroom where the murders were committed, that locking mechanism failed, and it was known to fail. It was prone to failure. Anticipating that our door lock is not going to lock, or the assailant has somehow gained access to an access key, I'm going to take every object and material I can in my space and barricade the doorway. If that door is to open when I don't want it to open, they're going to be confronted, just as this picture is demonstrating, chairs, desks, tables, making their job that much harder to see into the space or actually gain access and entry into. Okay. On the left-hand side of your screen is a real-world example from Northern California. It was a high school that experienced an active assailant event. The alert goes out, they hear the gunfire, and everybody that occupied that space took all that material that you're seeing before you and shoved it against the doorway. I've looked at this picture now for almost a year, and I still can't identify where the door is. That's what we're looking for, that just blocking that portal as much as we can. From the perspective of our assailant, if they're able to open the door, they're confronted with chairs and desk legs and books, and just we want to make it as convoluted of a mess as possible. Again, just delaying their ability to get inside that space. On the right are some examples of how we don't barricade ourselves in. That center picture, we want to push those objects up against the doorway. On the right-hand side are neatly stacked chairs and tables and desks. Again, don't take the time. It's not the appropriate time to stack chairs neatly in an orderly fashion. Throw those objects against the door. And on the bottom side, we've almost set up barriers or screens with our tables. Better yet, let's utilize those tables to shove against the doorway to create a barricade. If our space that we're occupying, our office space or this classroom, is devoid of chairs or desks or tables or things that we can't physically move in front of the door, there are ways that I can limit that door's ability to function, meaning open if I don't want it to. But I have to understand how that door functions, meaning does my door open away from me or does my door open inward towards me? Let's pick on the outward opening door first. Most of your commercial grade doors are going to have a rectangular box right above the door frame. And there's going to be basically an arm that articulates, expands, and collapses. When an outward opening door opens with the self-closing mechanism, that arm expands. If I take the belt that I'm wearing, if I take some HDMI cable, extension cord, a backpack strap, or a lanyard for my identification card, and I wrap it around that arm that has to articulate out like an accordion, if I wrap it around that mechanism, it's going to prevent that door from opening or closing, all right, limiting anybody's ability to gain access into my space. If I'm in a room that has a door that opens inward towards me, I can barricade that door with a chair. If I have the ability to shove some door wedges under that door frame, that's going to prevent that door from opening towards me. The important thing is here, I have to identify how that door functions and how that door opens and closes in order to defeat it. Commercial barricade devices. There's a lot of these products out on the market. The good thing about these products is they will limit the ability for a door to open and close. A lot of folks in the community use them to lock their doors and prevent burglaries and break-ins. The problem with these objects and these devices is we have one of these objects that is not approved by the campus or by the district. And if we don't understand how that object functions, and the one individual who put it on the door to prevent unauthorized access is somehow incapacitated, I now have to figure out how this object functions in an environment where I'm stressed out, where I have diminished physical capacities, like the ability to use my fine motor skills, my hands to manipulate door handles. And I also may be working in a limited visibility environment where there's smoke pouring into my space. The point is if there's a device on a door that's unauthorized, we need to vet that. We need to make sure that device functions, how we can function with it, how it operates. Absent that, let's trust that our doors and our door locking mechanisms are going to work. We have to verify that those systems are going to work before we add additional components onto our door spaces. Okay, last component on this topic is fighting for our life. Okay, this is a moral and ethical dilemma that myself, I can't tell you to do. Nobody on this planet can push you into this, into doing so. This is a decision that you have to make based on the situation devolving around you. Okay, but in order to put ourselves in that frame of mind, this individual has come into your space, whether it's your place of worship, your shopping center, the movie theater you're in, your campus, and has attempted to take your life and the lives of your friends and your colleagues. That would precipitate me for at least trying to defend myself and others. And it's not a fair fight. It's a hard thing to talk about in order to bring more violence or introduce more violence in an already violent situation. But this is the last ditch effort. And if we don't attempt to do something, you may be unfortunately hurt or killed if not acting. So what you see here in this picture, these individuals are utilizing their environment to their advantage. They're not armed with a firearm. This individual has a firearm in his possession. But what these individuals who are defending their space have that this individual doesn't is more than likely they have knowledge and intimate knowledge of that space. And all they have to do is wait for this individual to come through that doorway to initiate whatever defense mechanism that they have in store. So what we see here is we have an individual on the left and right-hand side of that doorway. I don't want to stand right in the front of the door when the individual is coming at me with a firearm. More than likely, there's nothing I can do to prevent me from being shot. But if I can hide in the corners on the side of the walls in that door, this individual coming into my space has to make a decision either to go left or right. Are they going to go left into my partner's fire extinguisher, or are they going to go right into that hot pot of coffee that my partner brewed up and strikes this individual with? So we have to prepare ourselves for the eventuality we may have to use violence in order to defend ourselves. And we may have to use improvised weapons. Again, we may not be in possession of what this individual has, but there are things in our environment we can use to defend ourselves with. And it's not a fair fight. Again, this person is trying to take your life and the lives of others. And if I have to pick up that 3-hole punch or arm myself with a fire extinguisher, I may have to do so. Okay. If we're experiencing this, if you are actively being shot at or targeted, it's an unnerving event. It's a very emotionally driven event. It's scary. Okay. And just like those folks in that video from Florida, the school board shooting video we're experiencing, some folks will experience paralysis, some more temporary than others, but there's going to be a point in time that you may be under such duress that it's hard for you to move. That's a normal physiological and a psychological response to this kind of trauma, but we have to continue to think through the process and do things to move to get away from the situation, or to potentially arm ourselves with an object to defend ourselves with. How do we get over that paralysis, that fear that sets in? What I can tell you to do is just to breathe. If you've ever taken a yoga class, or you understand sports psychology, athletes will do this before they throw that pitch or that Super Bowl winning touchdown pass, is they go into a rhythmic breathing pattern, meaning they're taking about 4 to 5 seconds of breath in, they're holding it for about 4 to 5 seconds, and they're releasing it for about 4 to 5 seconds. What that's doing to us internally, it's lowering that heart rate. We're fighting the effects of tunnel vision, the auditory exclusion, the loss of hearing, and more importantly, we're getting the dexterity back in our hands, because I need those hands to work to move my steering column to get away from a traffic accident, to dial 911, to manipulate a door handle, to pick up an object to defend myself with, to use my peripheral vision to see that object that may be cover and to hide behind that. I need those facilities to come back online to help me survive through this event. There's an interesting acronym called the OODA loop. It's OODA. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. If you've driven in Southern California, more than likely you've utilized the OODA loop process, all right? And what it stands for is observe. I observe somebody cutting me off in traffic, and I'm about to crash into this individual. I orient to that problem. I start looking at this individual's car. Now I go into my decision-making process. I decide, what am I going to do? I'm going to go left into the guardrail. I'm going to go right into the opposing lane where there's now occupied by a semi truck. Or I decide I'm going to hit the brakes and apply my brakes, and then I act on my decision. We do this cycle when we go into traumatic events. All right, it's a normal human function. All right, if we can temporarily suspend or stunt our assailant's ability to think through their OODA loop process while we're continuing to think through our OODA loop process, we can survive the event. Similarly, what Ginger did by striking that individual with her hand purse. He didn't anticipate that Ginger was going to hit him with an object. All right, he was going to show up and commit his murder, and that was it. He was not going to receive any resistance, but he did. Okay, point in case with this video. This individual that comes up and attempts to rob this potential victim of his cell phone and wallet probably never thought that his intended victim was going to take the gun out of his hands. Okay, this is an extremely dangerous scenario, and I don't advise taking a weapon out of somebody's hands, but it paints the picture that we can disrupt somebody's OODA loop cycle, meaning if they didn't anticipate us taking a weapon out of their hands, barricading ourselves into a classroom, striking them with some sort of object, we can take that initiative back. We can create that chaos and introduce that friction into their world, because they are human beings too. They're susceptible to all the psychological and physiological things regarding trauma that we're experiencing as well. Okay. If you're unfortunately hurt, if you've received a traumatic wound or injury as a result of this event, the most important thing for you to do is to stay as calm as possible, okay? Continue to breathe. Unfortunately, if you succumb to the fear and the panic and the dread and tell yourself that you're going to die, unfortunately, you will. What we're doing internally to ourselves, if we panic, we're going to increase that heart rate, and that blood is going to pump out of that injury that we've sustained, and we will expire. It's important for you to maintain a positive mindset and to continue to tell yourself that you're going to survive. We live and function and operate in a metropolitan environment, and more than likely, if we are injured and we're maintaining a good control over our breath and remaining as calm as we can, we're going to be whisked to a facility that's going to give you the proper medical attention and care that you need. Okay, you need to trust that your body is an amazing machine, and it can take a lot of trauma and damage. Okay, trust that, and always have that positive mindset that you're going to survive. When first responding officers arrive on location, I want you to understand what that's going to look like, how they're trained, and then how we integrate as survivors when they interface into our world. Okay, so they're taught from the academy that if they receive the call to go to an event involving an active assailant, an active shooting event, they're taught to enter that structure or that space, locate that assailant, and eliminate that threat. Okay, unfortunately, that means that they're going to be bypassing folks, including ourselves, that may be injured along the way. Their initial job is not to stop and render that aid. The good thing is, though, that they're going to be bringing a lot of resources with them to render us medical aid or to transport us to a medical facility if we are injured. Some things we want to consider and not do when they enter our space, impede their mobility or their way of traffic, and impede their way to get to the assailant by grabbing at them, reaching out, or blocking their traffic, or making any type of furtive movements. And just those Florida school board officials did. Once those officers entered their space, they started issuing loud commands. Follow those commands. If they're telling you to get on the ground, get down on the ground. They are entering us and assuming that everything in that space could be a potential threat. So they need to gain control over those occupants in that space. And in order to avoid us being unintentionally or intentionally targeted by law enforcement officers, we need to follow those commands. All right. Folks, that is your seminar on surviving an active assailant event. I hope it was informative, and then unfortunately, it's one of these topics that I wish we didn't have to speak about. But given recent events that have happened in society, it's a relevant topic to talk about. I hope that you never have to experience one of these events, but if you do, you're now armed with some knowledge and some tools in order to save yourself and others. Thank you.